When my sister inherited our mom's $230,000 country house and I got a $5 book, everyone expected me to fall apart, but that little book held a secret that turned me into the millionaire she always wished she could be. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Ethan Miller, and for as long as I can remember, I was always the quiet one in the family. I worked hard, minded my own business, and tried to make everyone proud, even when no one really noticed me. My sister, Jessica, was the opposite. She was loud, confident, and treated like the shining star of the family. Mom adored her, and everyone else followed her lead. People would always talk about how Jessica was going to be something big one day, while I was simply the other kid. When our mom passed away, everything changed for me. Not because I expected anything grand, but because I hoped, at least once, that I would be seen as equal. The day the will was read, Jessica walked around like she already owned the world. She had that proud smile on her face, the kind that said she knew she was going to get everything. And she was right. The lawyer announced that she was getting the country house, the land around it, and all the assets connected to it. Everyone clapped and congratulated her. She acted like she had just won a trophy. Then the lawyer turned to me. He handed me a small, old book. It had a torn cover, yellow pages, and a faint smell of dust. He simply said, "This is for you." That was it. No explanation. No warm note. No last message from Mom. Just that old book that looked like it belonged in a yard sale for $5. I felt my face burn as the room went silent. I heard someone whisper, "Well, that seems fair." Another voice said, "Ethan never expected much anyway." I did not say a word. I just nodded, took the book, and walked out. Jessica didn't even hide her smirk. She gave me a look that said, "You got what you deserve." She even joked loudly to her friends later, saying she might let me visit her new house if I behave. Every word she said that day stayed in my chest like a weight. But the thing is, I wasn't angry. I was hurt, yes, but I wasn't broken. I didn't yell or argue. I didn't fight for more. I simply walked away, book in hand, trying to swallow the embarrassment. I felt small. Invisible. Like I had never mattered. But even in that moment, something inside me whispered not to give up. I didn't know why Mom left me that book. I didn't know what was inside it. All I knew was that I wasn't going to let that humiliation define me. I wasn't defeated. I just needed to understand the reason behind this strange inheritance. And I had absolutely no idea that this little forgotten book was the doorway to a life I never imagined possible. Growing up, I learned very early that Jessica and I lived in two different worlds, even though we shared the same house and the same parents. She was the favorite in every possible way. Mom looked at her like she carried the whole future of the family on her shoulders. Every achievement of hers was celebrated like a holiday. When she made the cheer team, Mom threw a party. When she got her driver's license, Mom surprised her with a brand new red car on her 16th birthday. Everyone cheered, took pictures, and kept telling her how special she was. For me, life was quieter. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. I washed cars, mowed lawns, stocked shelves at a local store, and saved every dollar I could. When I turned 16, I bought myself an old used car that barely started in the winter. No one took pictures. No one clapped. Mom just said, "That's good, Ethan. Keep working hard," and went back to whatever she was doing. At family dinners, Jessica always sat in the center of attention. Mom would talk about her grades, her plans, her dreams. When I tried to share something about my day, the conversation quickly shifted back to her. After a while, I learned to stay silent. It was easier that way. I wasn't angry at Jessica, I just felt like I didn't exist in the same way she did. Mom paid for Jessica's college without a second thought. She told everyone, "My daughter is going to be a star someday." When it came to me, she said, "Ethan is independent. He'll figure things out." And I did. I worked 2 part-time jobs, studied late at night, and did everything alone because that was normal for me. I never expected more. So when the will was read, I wasn't shocked that Jessica got everything. I had seen this pattern my whole life. She was always the one Mom believed in. She was the one Mom trusted with the family name, the one she claimed would inherit greatness. Even as kids, Mom would say things like, "Jessica is destined for big things." And when she looked at me, her tone changed. It was softer, but not proud. More like she felt sorry for me. Still, knowing something your whole life doesn't make it painless. Hearing the lawyer say Jessica's name next to each asset stung in a way I didn't expect. It felt final, like even after death, Mom had a favorite. And then there was my part, a $5 book that looked worthless at first glance. I kept thinking about why she did that. Why give Jessica a house and land worth more than I could ever dream of, and hand me something that seemed useless? Why leave me a book instead of a message explaining her choice? Why trust Jessica with everything and leave me with something that felt like nothing? It wasn't jealousy. It was a deep ache, the kind that grows after years of being second place in your own family. I wasn't surprised, but I was hurt. And even though I didn't understand it at the time, that small book, ignored by everyone, would soon change my entire life. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house felt quiet enough to breathe, I finally sat down with the old book. I had been carrying it around for days, unsure what to do with it. It looked too worn to be valuable and too ordinary to hold any meaning. But something in me kept saying I should open it, even if it only brought more confusion. I sat on the edge of my bed, turned on the small lamp beside me, and slowly opened the book. The pages felt fragile under my fingers, almost ready to fall apart. At first, it looked like a simple journal, no title, no date, just blank lines and faded ink. I thought maybe it belonged to someone before Mom, or maybe it was just an old notebook she used for random thoughts. But as I flipped deeper into the pages, I stopped breathing for a second. There, written in Mom's handwriting, was my name. I recognized her writing instantly. She used the same looping letters and slow strokes she always used when writing birthday cards or grocery lists. But these words felt different. They were shaky, uneven, like she wrote them with a heavy heart. The first line was simple, "Ethan, I never told you everything." I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand why she would hide something in a book instead of telling me herself. I kept reading. She wrote about things I had never heard before, regrets she carried for years, choices she wished she had made differently, moments she admitted she was unfair. She talked about mistakes she couldn't fix and truths she couldn't say out loud. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was seeing a side of her she never showed anyone, not even Jessica. Near the middle of the journal, I found something folded between 2 pages. It was a small, hand-drawn map. The paper was old, almost brown, and the edges were tearing. Along with the map was a name I didn't recognize. Under that name, Mom had written a short message, "This belongs to you. Only to you." I'm sorry I never explained. My hand shook as I turned the page. The next entry talked about our great-grandfather. She wrote that he owned more land than anyone ever realized. It wasn't recorded in the usual way, and the title had been separated from the rest of the family property. Most people forgot it existed. According to her notes, the land rights were passed to her, but she never told Jessica. She feared Jessica wouldn't understand the value, the history, or the responsibility behind it. She didn't trust her with it. But she trusted me. She wrote that she left the house to Jessica because she believed Jessica needed something visible to feel accomplished. But the hidden land, something she believed would one day be worth more, she left to me in the only place she felt safe, inside this journal. She ended the entry with a quiet line that stayed in my mind for days, "I hope one day you'll forgive me." I closed the book slowly, feeling like the ground under me had shifted. Everything I thought I knew about the inheritance suddenly felt different. This wasn't just a book. It wasn't worthless. It was a message. A key. A secret Mom could never say aloud. And somewhere out there was land connected to my name, land Jessica didn't know existed, and land that, according to the journal, was far more valuable than the house she inherited. Jessica wasted no time celebrating her inheritance. Within a week, she hosted a backyard party at the country house, as if she had won something incredible through her own hard work. She decorated the whole place with lights, balloons, and signs that said "New Home, New Life." People from the neighborhood came, most of them eager to see the property she now owned. I didn't really want to go, but she insisted, sending me a message saying, "You should at least see what a real inheritance looks like." I went because part of me hoped she wanted peace, or maybe one sincere moment as siblings. But the second I stepped into the backyard, I knew I had made a mistake. Jessica stood in the center with a drink in her hand, laughing loudly as she showed people around like she was some kind of celebrity. When she saw me, her smile stretched even wider, not in a warm way, but in a way that made my stomach twist. She called out, "Look who finally showed up, the unwanted son." People turned and looked at me, some laughing, some whispering. I froze for a second. My face burned as I stood there, wishing the ground would swallow me. Jessica walked over with a dramatic sigh and held up the old book I had received. "Everyone, this is what Ethan got," she said loudly. "A $5 yard sale special. Guess Mom knew he wouldn't know what to do with anything else." Her friends laughed. Some shook their heads like they pitied me. One guy said, "Man, that's rough," while another joked that I should sell the book and buy myself a real life. Jessica kept going, telling people she might let me stay in her guest room if I earn it, as if she was doing me some big favor. I tried to stay calm, but every word felt like a slap. It wasn't just about the book anymore. It was about years of being treated like I didn't matter. I stood there quietly, trying to hold myself together, but the pressure in my chest became too much. I finally turned and walked out of the backyard before anyone could see my eyes fill. By the time I reached my car, the tears had already fallen. I hated that she had so much power over my emotions. I hated that I let her words hurt me again. Driving home felt endless. I couldn't stop replaying the moment she held the book up like a joke. When I got back to my small apartment, I placed the book on the table and sat in front of it for a long time. My hands were still shaking, not from anger, but from the humiliation I couldn't shake off. After a while, I opened the journal again. Seeing Mom's handwriting calmed me in a way I didn't expect. I read the notes slowly, trying to understand everything she wanted me to find. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to prove Jessica wrong. I just needed answers, real answers. I needed to know why Mom trusted me with something she couldn't speak about. That night, for the first time, I made a promise to myself. I would follow every clue in the journal. I would find the land Mom wrote about. I would seek the truth she couldn't say out loud. Not to hurt anyone, not to win anything, but to finally get the closure I had been denied all my life.
The next morning, I sat at my table with the journal open in front of me, staring at the map and the name Mom had written. I kept running my finger over the lines she drew, trying to understand what she wanted me to find. The name written beside the map was Harold Benton, and underneath it Mom wrote, "He will explain." I didn't know who he was, but she sounded certain. That alone was enough to push me forward. I searched his name online and found out he was an old lawyer who used to work with my great-grandfather many years ago. His office was in a small town 2 hours away, so I decided to go. The whole drive felt strange. I kept replaying Jessica's party in my head, the laughter, the humiliation. Part of me wondered if I was wasting my time chasing something that didn't matter. But when I thought about Mom's handwriting, the apology, and the way she wrote my name, I knew I couldn't turn back. When I arrived, the law office looked old and worn, almost like time had forgotten it. Inside, an elderly man with white hair and sharp eyes sat behind a wooden desk. When I introduced myself, he looked at me for a long moment before nodding slowly. "You look just like your mother," he said quietly. Then he asked about the journal. I handed it to him, and he opened it carefully, as if it were something sacred. The moment he saw the map, his whole expression changed. He leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "So she finally told you," he said. I asked him what he meant, and he motioned for me to sit. He explained that my great-grandfather owned a large piece of land far from the main family property. Most people forgot about it because it wasn't used for farming or building. But the land had something special beneath it, mineral deposits. For years the ownership had been tangled in old paperwork, but legally, the rights passed to Mom. He said she came to him years ago, worried about Jessica's spending habits and impulsive decisions. She didn't want Jessica to control something so valuable, so she asked him to keep everything quiet until she was gone. I sat there stunned, trying to take in every word. The lawyer pulled out old documents, files, and maps. He pointed to the exact land marked in the journal and told me something I didn't expect. An energy company had recently reached out, asking who owned the mineral rights. They believed there could be a huge resource under that land, something worth millions. Legally, he said, tapping the papers, this is all yours. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I felt like the room was spinning. This land, this secret, was tied to my name. Jessica had the house, the furniture, the pride, the celebration. But I had something hidden, something with real value, something Mom trusted only me to handle. A mix of emotions hit me all at once. Shock, relief, confusion. But underneath it all was anger I didn't want to feel. Not anger at Mom, but at the way everything had unfolded. Jessica mocked me, humiliated me, treated me like nothing, while I held something she could never imagine. I left the office with the documents in my hands and the truth sitting heavy in my chest. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. My life was no longer the same. A few days after visiting the lawyer, I received a call from Blue Rock Resources, the energy company interested in the land. The voice on the other end was polite but businesslike. They explained that they had checked all the records and confirmed that I was the legal owner of the mineral rights beneath the property. At first, I couldn't believe it. I had expected nothing from the land, and now a company was offering me a deal worth millions. They sent me the contract the next day. It was detailed, outlining drilling rights, royalties, and timelines. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the pages for hours, feeling overwhelmed. Part of me felt like this was a dream, too big to be real. I read and reread every line, making sure I understood what I was signing. There were terms about how much I would earn, how the company would manage the project, and when payments would start. By the end, the total value was clear, a 7-figure deal that could change my life completely. Signing it wasn't easy. I wanted to be certain I wasn't just getting swept up in excitement or anger. I remembered the nights Jessica mocked me, laughing at the little book, the times relatives whispered about how I deserved nothing. The moments I felt invisible even in my own family. All of that came rushing back. But I also remembered Mom's handwriting in the journal, the apology, the map, the trust she had placed in me. That was what gave me the courage to move forward. I realized this wasn't about proving Jessica wrong or making anyone jealous. It was about finally stepping into the life I had worked for quietly, the life my efforts and patience deserved. After taking a few deep breaths, I signed the contract. Immediately, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. For the first time, someone, Mom, the lawyer, even life itself, had trusted me with something truly valuable. I finally felt seen and respected, not just as a sibling who was overlooked, but as a person capable of handling responsibility, wealth, and opportunity. The reality started to sink in slowly. I could finally afford my own home, invest in the things I had dreamed about for years, and build a future I controlled. Jessica had her house, but she had no idea that the small, dusty book she laughed at contained the key to something far greater than she could ever imagine. Sitting there with the signed papers in my hands, I let myself feel pride for the first time in my life. Not arrogance, not revenge, just pride. I had been underestimated my entire life, dismissed at every turn, and yet here I was holding more money than anyone in my family had ever imagined I could have. It was validation in the purest sense, a confirmation that hard work, patience, and trust could turn even the smallest gift, a $5 book, into a life-changing fortune. For the first time, I smiled knowing I didn't have to beg for recognition or approval. I had earned it in a way that mattered, and nothing could take that away from me.
While I was learning the truth about the land and signing the contract, Jessica's life began to take a different turn. At first, she was excited, posting pictures online of the country house, decorating every room, and showing off her new furniture. Friends and neighbors complimented her, and she loved the attention. She believed that inheriting the house meant she had won, that life would now be easy, and that she could live without worry. But reality hit fast. The house was huge, with old plumbing, a leaky roof, and a long driveway that needed constant maintenance. Taxes were high, insurance was expensive, and there were repairs she hadn't even noticed yet. She tried to handle it all, thinking she could manage, but the bills kept piling up. Every month, she realized that the inheritance wasn't a gift that came without work. Jessica never asked for help. She assumed she could handle it all herself, and she kept putting on a show for social media. She posted pictures of her decorated kitchen, her new garden, and the view from the porch, calling herself a proud homeowner. Followers commented, congratulating her, and she smiled at their praise. No one could see the stress behind the camera. No one knew that she had already missed mortgage payments and was struggling to keep up with utilities. She even hired people to help with cleaning and gardening, thinking that would make life easier, but every new service added more bills. Friends began to notice her stress, but she brushed it off, saying she was fine and enjoying her new life. She didn't realize that I was quietly handling something far bigger, negotiating deals that would give me real financial freedom. As the months passed, the burden grew heavier. One day, she called me in panic, trying to brag at first, then asking for advice. I listened, offering polite suggestions, but I didn't intervene. She assumed she had control, that she was still ahead, but she didn't know that her financial foundation was unstable. The house that once made her proud now became a source of stress, tension, and constant worry. She had inherited the appearance of success, but the reality was very different. Every unpaid bill, every small repair she ignored, every tax notice she delayed added pressure. The social media posts kept her image intact, but behind the scenes, she was drowning. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, focusing on the opportunities Mom had left me. I didn't need to announce my success yet. Watching her struggle silently, I realized the contrast between our situations. She had inherited the house thinking it was her reward, while I had inherited a book that turned out to be worth far more. Jessica's downfall had quietly begun, built not by my actions but by her assumptions. She thought wealth and comfort came automatically with inheritance. She didn't know that life could be far more complicated, and that some fortunes require patience, knowledge, and perseverance, qualities she had ignored while mocking me. A few weeks later, I was surprised to see my face and name in a local business magazine. The headline read, "The Unexpected Millionaire, How Ethan Miller Turned a $5 Book into a Fortune." I had agreed to the interview quietly, wanting to share the story of the land and the deal, but I never expected it to spread so fast. Jessica saw it first. She was scrolling through social media when a friend tagged her in the article. Her eyes widened as she read my name, then quickly scanned the story. She froze, and her phone slipped from her hand onto the couch. Her jaw dropped. The disbelief on her face was impossible to miss. She couldn't understand how the quiet, overlooked sibling she had mocked had suddenly become a millionaire. Within hours, she was at my apartment, pounding on the door. When I opened it, she stormed in without waiting for an answer. "Ethan, what is this?" she demanded, holding her phone like proof of some mistake. "I don't understand. You can't just..." "How? I deserve half of this." "Mom left you a book, yes, but this isn't fair." I stayed calm and motioned for her to sit. "Jessica," I said quietly, "this isn't about fairness. This is about trust, about what Mom left for me. She trusted me with something she couldn't explain to anyone else." I pulled the journal from the table and handed it to her. She looked at it skeptically, almost as if she expected it to vanish. I opened to the page with Mom's handwriting and read aloud a line, "This is for Ethan alone, for all the years I failed him." Jessica's face went pale. Her hands shook as she held the book, reading the words herself. Every sentence made her shift in the chair, her eyes widening more with each line. The anger she carried moments before changed into something else, shock, embarrassment, and a mixture of frustration she couldn't contain. She tried to argue, saying she should have some claim, but I simply looked at her and said, "Mom knew what she was doing. She trusted me. That was the point." I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply let her see the truth. She realized, in that moment, that her mockery, her gloating, her assumption that I was less than her, hadn't mattered at all. The fortune she thought she had earned through visibility and attention was never hers to claim. Jessica broke down. She covered her face with her hands, shaking, angry at herself, angry at Mom, angry at me, but mostly embarrassed. The truth hit harder than anything I had ever imagined. She had spent years believing she was the favored one, mocking the sibling who seemed insignificant, and now, that sibling held more than she ever could. I didn't gloat. I let her sit there, silent, letting her come to terms with the consequences of her actions. For the first time in years, the roles had reversed. And I could finally, quietly, let the moment exist without adding a single word of revenge. After Jessica's visit, I could have reacted in many ways. I could have yelled, shamed her, or made her feel small in front of everyone. But I didn't. I realized that the most powerful revenge wasn't about words or actions, it was about letting my success speak for itself. She kept calling, asking for advice, asking me to help her with bills, taxes, and repairs. I listened politely, but I didn't give her a single dollar. I told her once, calmly, "You mocked me for getting a $5 book. You never cared what was inside. This is something I needed to discover for myself." That was all. No argument, no lecture. Just the truth. As months passed, my life changed quietly but dramatically. I bought a beautiful home, one that felt mine, a place I had worked for without anyone's approval. I started a small business connected to the energy land, hiring people I trusted and building a team that shared my values. Every step I took reminded me that the hard work and patience I had invested mattered. Meanwhile, Jessica struggled. Word began to spread about my success. People in the neighborhood, the town, even online, started talking about how I had turned a tiny, overlooked book into a fortune. Her friends and followers who once admired her started whispering about her situation. She had looked down on me for years, but now the tables had turned. People remembered her gloating, her mocking, and her words came back to embarrass her. I didn't need to do anything publicly. I didn't post about my wealth, I didn't flaunt the house or the business. I let the story speak for itself. The more I focused on building my life, the more the contrast between us became clear. She had the house, the attention, the image, but I had security, independence, and control over my future. That was the kind of power no one could take away. I also started giving back quietly, donating to causes Mom had cared about, helping local families, and supporting programs for young adults who worked hard but were often overlooked. Every donation, every act of support reminded me why Mom had left me the journal. It wasn't just wealth, it was trust, responsibility, and the chance to make a difference. Jessica eventually stopped asking for help. She realized that I wasn't going to bail her out or rescue her from the mistakes she had made. She had to face the reality she had ignored for so long. I didn't need to gloat or seek revenge. My life, my choices, and my achievements became the quiet but undeniable answer to every insult and every dismissal I had endured. In the end, my revenge was silent, simple, and perfect. I didn't humiliate anyone. I just lived my life fully, and the world saw the results. I became the success story, the one everyone talked about, not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because I finally honored the trust my mother had placed in me. Months later, I found myself standing at Mom's grave, the wind gently moving the flowers we had left behind. I knelt down, feeling the weight of everything that had happened in the past year. I wasn't there to thank her for money or wealth, because that was never the point. I was there to thank her for trusting me, for believing in me when no one else did. That old $5 book she left me wasn't just a gift, it was a key to a life built on patience, trust, and resilience. It reminded me that sometimes the smallest, most overlooked things carry the greatest value. Meanwhile, Jessica's life continued to unravel. The house she had inherited, which once seemed like a symbol of pride and success, became a heavy burden. Bills and taxes piled up, repairs went unpaid, and the stress slowly overtook her. She tried to hold on, but eventually she lost the house. It was a harsh lesson, one that came without anyone needing to push her down. It was simply the consequence of her choices and assumptions. I didn't feel joy in her loss. I only felt relief that I no longer needed to be concerned about her actions. As for me, life had changed completely. I moved into a home I could finally call my own, one that reflected the work, patience, and care I had poured into building a future. My business was growing steadily, and I had a team I trusted, people who valued effort and integrity. Every step I took reminded me of the journey from being overlooked and underestimated to becoming someone respected and secure. I also dedicated part of my time to giving back, honoring the lessons Mom had tried to teach. I donated to causes she cared about, supported people who were starting with nothing, and quietly helped those who were often ignored by society. This wasn't about making a name for myself, it was about keeping her trust alive and using the legacy she left me to create something meaningful. Sitting in my office one evening, reflecting on the past, I realized how far I had come. From a $5 book to a life of stability and purpose, the journey wasn't easy, but it was mine. I understood finally that success isn't about showing off or competing, it's about quiet growth, smart decisions, and resilience. Mom had given me more than a fortune. She had given me a chance to prove that even the person everyone counts out can rise higher than expected. I smiled quietly, thinking about everything that had happened. Sometimes, the smallest inheritance holds the biggest fortune, I said to myself. And sometimes, the person the world counts out becomes the person no one can catch up to. In that moment, I felt complete, not because of money, not because of revenge, but because I had finally become the person I was always meant to be.